Good morning. Professional tennis is a good exercise because it allows us to see the profound change in our society. From that ideal world the United States was trying to build to that cashing in on it all. And Billie Jean King in professional tennis is a good icon of that. Let's change the subject in two ways now. Let's talk about contemporary times. We had been talking about the 1970s. And now let's change the subject and talk about you. You're the subject. You're the one listening to this. Point over in one direction, please, and there's Billie Jean King and everything she represents. Harry the hippie and Al the Afro and Donna the feminist. And now point in the other direction. There's a group of people over here. Point to those people. Now let's get started. Either last year or the year before, there were two commercials during the US Open tennis tournament. One was Billie Jean King, and she was talking about herself actually and the women's movement and professional tennis and tying it into the US Open tennis tournament. It was all the same. If you were for watching tennis, then you were for Billie Jean King. And then there was another commercial. That commercial was selling tennis rackets. There are only two places in this world that make tennis rackets anymore, Japan and China. And during the commercial, they zeroed in on the factory and zeroed in on a young girl who was operating machinery and making those tennis rackets. That was wrong. That was terribly and nightmarishly wrong. That young Asian girl is going to have to spend her entire life in a factory operating machinery, making tennis rackets. If she had a child, she would have to get up and drop that child at the daycare center, work all day long at the factory, and come in and pick her up, and probably have to get up once or twice during the night and do it again. She has no chance of raising her own child. It never should happen that way. It should happen this way. That young Chinese gal gets together with that young Japanese gal, who gets together with that young American gal, who gets together with that British and Brazilian gal, and a whole lot of them are laughing at the shopping mall learning Valley Girl talk. It's their time in life to do that sort of thing. And preparing for home economics. That world, that was the world that was thrown out with professional tennis. That's the world that Billie Jean King, her and hers, threw out. Let's keep this up. Very recently, I know a young girl. I have to watch what I say so it can't zero in on any one person, but it gets close enough and it represents millions of gals now. She is a young gal. She has a toddler, a girl that's just getting to the point where she's standing and running around and laughing. Look at me, Ma, I can walk. And that young mother has to come up with $1,600 a month in rent for an apartment that isn't that nice, and another $700 or $800 in childcare. She's scrambling to find work to take care of everything. I happen to see this one moment, which is why I'm taking care to mention her. It's one of those moments where the expression on your face changes 2 or 3 times in an instant. She went from looking at her young girl and saying, I want to stay home and take care of you. I want to be the one to watch you. And then it changed into this determination. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to work how many jobs and how many hours. And she had this sense of determination. She's the hero. She would make an absolutely terrific mom. I wonder if she's a gal that you give extra classes, home economic classes to, and you come across with a budget, and you just get out of the way and let her raise the child, and if anything, you show up with a couple extra children. Home economics. Now, point over to, you tell her, by the way, you're listening to this, you tell her that the economics just isn't going to work out. It's not going to work out. You can sit here all day long and say anything you want. It's not going to work out. You have to change society back. Now, you point over to Billie Jean King. She caused that. And point over to that young gal. Remember, this speech is to you, and now you're going to have to do a couple of things. You know the drill. You take a step back and you tell yourself, the priest is on one side, the pimp is on the other. And you make a value judgment that says that people who hustle, con, manipulate, and intimidate other people are by definition the bad guys. That's the value judgment statement you make. Not everybody in society, in the history of human beings, makes that value judgment. Then you're going to, along with that, you're going to have to take into account a sense of original sin. These thoughts in your mind that have to do with fear and sex, and your attitude changing your environment, and your environment changing your attitude. And you have to learn all that. What takes away your free will? Fear, sex, ignorance, and violence. What gives you a sense of free will? You put that sack right side in, and you hold the Pope, or excuse me, you hold Christ's divinity as faith, that little star in the sky. The Pope holds the moral high ground. I choose to put the Pope in charge. And just by saying that, I realize I'm the one in charge, and I sort of wake up. Right then and there, I start to have a sense of free will. Now, there are two other things that come along with that. One is the fact that you're going to have to face people who are violent. You're going to have to face that kind of Darwin violence, and it's incredibly difficult. It's something that a human being is hardwired not to stand up to. A human being would rather walk onto a football field and face the front four of the Green Bay Packers than face some characters who know how to hustle, con, manipulate, and intimidate people. It's just the way you are. Years ago, the Air Force guys would say, just pretend there's a fog in front of you and walk into the fog. That's all you can do. The British guys would say, when it comes to a bum's rush, look behind you, turn around, and pretend to look behind your back into the shadows. You're going to have to face people who are going to attack you before you can so much as think the world, before you can so much as say the words inside your head. That's one of the things you're going to have to do. Here's the other one. You are going to have to defend a third person. It's a very famous philosophical thing. It's what makes the difference between the university professor who's Catholic and the university professor who's a communist. You're going to have to defend a third person. That young gal gets taken care of by her mom gets taken care of by the husband, it clicks in and becomes a family unit. You take care of them, and it goes on from there. Let me say that again. The Pope holds the moral high ground. The Pope washes the feet of some poor slob. You will the good of another person, it turns into a normal supply and demand curve. And let me say it again. There's the American Army Green Berets, who are the big lugs that defend the poor and the oppressed. And then there's the communist goose-stepping armies, and they do not. Let's stick to the American Army Green Berets and American Yank and what we call the good guys. So there you are. You're going to have to do a couple of things. You're going to have to straighten yourself up. Then you're going to have to face this incoherent violence. You're going to have to walk into the fog, and you're going to have to defend a third person. Let's end this anecdote right here. Don't worry about admitting the actions you have to take tomorrow. Worry about admitting all this to yourself and saying the words out loud. So let's end this anecdote. Somebody out there, be a Yank. Somebody out there, be a man.